Well, I guess we'll resume I guess I'm not on yet, huh? Now I'm on. Okay. So we'll go back to following these places for the Amish church service in the year of 1877. Joel Bender and Catherine Hostetler were married by Joel Beachy in 1868. 9 years later, they lived on Rock Lodge Road near Mosser Road. Here, the camera is facing east with Meadow Mountain in the background. This location is the farthest south of those listed. Of their 7 children, Lydia had died a year before this meeting at age 6. Now they had Daniel, age 8, William, 6, Fanny, 4, Susan, 3, Katie, 2, Christian, 1. Scrubbing and cleaning for hosting the church may not have been easy for this young family. But the family had hired help in 1880, so likely also in 1877. The 1880 census lists Samuel Peck, age 23, and Nancy Spiker, 19, each as servant. As sometimes occurred in Amish families, the Benders reached outside the Amish community for help in home and farm. The case of Nancy Spiker may have been a matter of benevolence also. The census also lists Nancy's 6-month-old son. Joel and Catherine Bender are buried in the old Cherryglade Cemetery. Now, from the farthest south location, near McHenry, we go far north to a farm that hugs the Pennsylvania line. This is the home of Jacob and Susanna Schwarzentruber. Here, the camera is in Pennsylvania, pointing southeast to the Schwarzentruber farm below. The distance between this meeting of August 5 and the previous meeting near McHenry is 16 miles, about 2.5 hours by horseback. The weather on August 5 may have been favorable, but we wonder how many from the Foxtown cluster attended church services in the Grantsville cluster and vice versa. The picture on the screen, taken from this farm in Maryland, shows the adjoining farm of Joel B. Miller in Pennsylvania in the distance. Why the cow? It had been chased away 3 times by the photographer, but always returned to the same spot, so it managed well to be photographed. Jacob Schwarzentruber crossed the Atlantic Ocean with his parents as a 5-year-old in 1839. He married first to Elizabeth Hirschberger in 1860. They had 11 children. 4 died when young. Mother Elizabeth died in February 1875, 2 years before this meeting, leaving Jacob with 7 children, ages 3 to 11. 6 months later, Jacob married Susanna Hostetler. In 1877, Susanna was a stepmother to Jacob's 7 children and a 4-month-old daughter. This family had excellent help in hosting the service. A maid, Levina Petersheim, was in the household as shown in the census of 1870 and 1880. Various testimonies tell of Levina's faithfulness and effectiveness in the Schwarzentruber home. Jacob Schwarzentruber is buried in the family cemetery on this farm. Susanna is buried in the Yoder Cemetery in Summit Mills. Next, we go north from Grantsville across the Cassleman River to Mount Nebo, Hare Hollow Road, to the home of Jonas J. and Anna Beachy. Jonas was known by the common nickname of Yon, actually Rot Yon, Red Yon, because of his red hair. This is the current site of the home of Delvin and Sharon Mast. The house of 1877 no longer stands, but it appears in photographs. The 13th wedding anniversary of Jonas and Anna was approaching when they hosted this church service. Of 10 children born to them by that time, they had lost 2, one at age 1 and another at 5 months. This household consisted of Jonas and Anna and 8 children, the oldest age 9 and the youngest 4 months. The persons in the photo are assumed to be members of this family. I have no listing of hired help in 1870 or 1880. Perhaps there was none in 1877. When Anna died in 1826, son Leo wrote in her obituary, quoting Leo, "She was widely known for her good common sense, for her pleasant personality, and for her good Christian character. Her hands were not only constantly busy in her own home, but her heart went out to the helpless and the needy in the community, and she devoted many hours to either day or night in nursing some young mother or a sick child." J.B. Miller, editor of the Herald of Orhite, concurred, quoting J.B. Miller, "A minister of the gospel should never be a flatterer, and I am frank to state that were all wives and mothers as tender-hearted, as largely compassionate and sympathetic, as capable in discernment and judgment, as even in mood and well-balanced in temper, combined with general Christian virtues, as was Mother Beachy, the poor mortal who is called to preach would have some of his anxieties greatly reduced, as he is asked to preach funeral sermons." J.B. Miller had preached the funeral sermon in this case. Son Leo later became a renowned photographer, but he was only 3 years old in 1877, too young to wield a camera. Anna died at age 86 and Jonas at age 99. Jonas and Anna Beachy are buried in the Maple Glen Cemetery. On September 2, the meeting came to the home of Solomon and Katherine Yoder. This is very near to where we are sitting now. Upon leaving the drive here at Maple Glen, turn right, go 600 feet up to the curve, and Solomon Yoder's home in 1877. Here was a blended family of 9 children. 3 were older from Catherine's previous marriage, and 6 were younger, that is, 3 from Solomon's previous marriage, and 3 from Solomon and Catherine's current marriage. The 6 younger children were aged 10 down to less than 2 months, and 3 sons from Catherine's former marriage, aged 19 down to 12. It must have been a busy week for Katherine as Sunday approached. We may assume that Solomon was in the church service this morning at his own house, but Solomon did self-confess to a time when he failed Sunday observance during the maple season. On that weekend, the sap scarcely dipped on Saturday, but the weather changed during the night and keelers were being filled on Sunday morning. Solomon decided to haul in and boil the sap that day. By Sunday evening, the weather was cold and Solomon continued to boil the sap. When drowsiness hit, he found a cozy spot and fell asleep. Upon awakening, he found the syrup burned and the evaporating pan badly damaged. As told to his grandson, Alvin H. Yoder, Solomon declared that that was the last time that he held sugar water on Sunday. Solomon and Katherine Yoder are buried in the Maple Glen Cemetery. 2 weeks after the meeting in the home of Solomon Yoder in the Grantsville cluster, services were scheduled for the home of Samuel and Mary Otto Brenaman on Frank Brenaman Road in the Kininger cluster. They lived about 1 mile southeast of the crossroads. Samuel had bought that 200-acre property 7 years earlier. His land was spread on both sides of the road. This homestead was a busy, industrious place, farming, sawmilling, construction of buildings. Here in a new house lived Samuel and Mary Otto Branaman and 5 children, the oldest age 14, the youngest age 4. A hired man was in the household in 1880 and may have been in 1877. They were Amish, but how Amish? A daughter reported that Sam and Mary talked Dutch a lot of the time, but Sam, quote, always talked English with us kids, end quote. Both Samuel and Mary are buried, not in the family or Amish cemetery, but in the Lutheran cemetery in Kininger. How was their funeral conducted? I failed to find their obituaries, but notes among the papers of Bishop Joel J. Miller suggest funeral arrangements by the Amish church. Daughter Mabel, who was not Amish, remembered when her father died, the Amish people sang at the home in their own language. She exclaimed, "That was really something." The choice of burial in the Lutheran cemetery may have been that of the children, of whom none were Amish in adult life. But Samuel, when 75 years of age after Mary's death, participated in a communion service administered in the home by Joel J. Miller for people who were unable to attend church services. Samuel and Mary Brenaman are buried in the Kininger Cemetery. Jacob and Sarah Nei lived in the Mount Nebo Cassleman cluster. The precise location is not identified. Jacob was involved in some civil interests. In 1877, he was appointed by the county commissioners to determine the routing of a new road from the national road near Grantsville to the state line. That road is known today as River Road. You may remember earlier I had reference to determining where that road should, earlier it was a reference to asking for a road, and now this has to do with determining where that river road in from Route 40 should be put. There were 6 children in 1877, the oldest 21, none married. All 6 may have been in the Amish church service on this day. But later, apparently only 1 chose Amish affiliation. The oldest, Elizabeth, died 4 years after this church service at age 25. The second, Barbara, was married in the Amish church and later moved to Ohio with her husband, Christian J. Miller, who later joined the Christian Science movement. 3 of those who affiliated, 3 of those whose affiliation is known chose the Reformed Church. This pattern of movement of family members of Amish upbringing to non-Amish affiliation also occurred in other families during the 4th quarter of the 19th century. Jacob Nei was married first to Katherine Miller, who died soon after their marriage at age 19. He and his second wife, Sarah Nei, lived together 57 years. Both died in 1910 in the same week. He on Tuesday, she on Thursday, with a funeral for both on Saturday here at Maple Glen. The funeral included a sermon in German by Joel J. Miller and in English by Jonas B. Miller. The obituary in the Republican reports, over 700 people assembled to pay their last tribute of respect to a kind father and loving mother, both of whom were held in highest esteem throughout the surrounding country. Jacob and Sarah Nei are buried in the Maple Glen Cemetery. For the church service of October 14, the benches had a short trip from one part to another of the Mount Nebo Casselman cluster. Levi and Mary Kinsinger's farm was 3 miles south of Grantsville along 495. Here was a family of 6 children, the oldest aged 16 when the church met in their house, and the youngest 5. Levi and Mary Kinsinger are in the front row, center, surrounded by their children as adults. Levi was active in the Sunday school movement started by the Mennonites in the nearby Ridgely School in 1874. The Ridgely School was used by the Mennonites until 1889, when a meeting house was built along State Route 495. Others of the Amish community in the area became active in the Mennonite outreach. Historian Sanford G. Shetler writes, quote, "The community at this time was about 50% Amish, and the Mennonite church grew largely from this Amish stock." In 1880, Levi Kinsinger, his Amish neighbor Moses Kemp, and Henry Winterberg attended a Sunday school convention at the Lutheran Church in Oakland. Winterberg, a Lutheran, was the superintendent of the Ridgely Sunday School. Each of the 3 men was a delegate from a Ridgely Sunday School. Presumably, both the Sunday School, Mennonite and Lutheran, used the same facility on alternating Sundays, or the Lutherans used a building other than the Ridgely School. Whatever the arrangement, Moses Kemp and his Amish neighbor were associated with both the Mennonite and the Lutheran Sunday schools. It is unlikely that the Sunday school was a joint effort. At the convention, the Lutherans expressed disfavor with doing Sunday schools with others. Affiliating with the Old Order, son Jonas and Levi's son Daniel, Levi Kinsinger, was age 19 in 1877. Later, he served as Sunday school superintendent of Cassleman Mennonite Sunday School. In 1896, when the Amish Mennonite Sunday School was organized here at Maple Glen, Daniel was elected superintendent by a large number of votes. This was after he had superintended the Mennonite Sunday School. Solomon D. Yoder was elected as the assistant superintendent. A beautiful insight into the marriage of Levi and Mary Kinsinger is included in Levi's obituary, written by J.B. Miller, quoting that editorial. This is a touching recollection, There is a touching recollection which comes to the writer's mind of an example of self-denial in deference to his wife, which the late brother related in one of his conversations. He referred to his desire to visit his Western relatives, whom he had planned to visit, but his wife had no desire to travel, but preferred to remain home, but urged him to go. He said he thought over the matter and concluded that as she had, with him, labored hard to gain a competence and had done her full share in securing the same, he would not use part of those means for his own enjoyment unless she could also enjoy thereof, and he never made the desired visit. Levi and Mary Kininger are buried in the Maple Glen Cemetery. Daniel and Susan Brenaman lived on Beachy Road, 1/2 mile off Foxtown Road. They were there on their 31st year of marriage in 1877. Here they are in a picture of a later time. 12 children had been born to them. 2 had died as infants. 4 were married and had families, and likely 5 were yet in the home, ranging in age from 20 down to 8. The future church affiliations of their 10 children who grew to adulthood. Six were Amish and local. 1 was Amish and then Lutheran, with issues of status with the Amish church and the band. 2 were Eastern Amish Mennonite in Ohio. 1 was Mennonite, local Glade. Varied church affiliation was not an unusual pattern for Amish families in this period, but atypical in this family was 3 daughters marrying Amish men who joined the Amish church. Sarah married Louis Beitzel. Elizabeth married Christian Selders. Mary married Peter Opel. Of the 6 children who were Amish when the division of 1895 occurred, 3 identified with the Old Order group and 3 with the conservative Amish Mennonite group. Affiliating with the Old Order, son Jonas and Lydia Bender Brenaman, daughter Katherine and Urias Yoder, son Joel and Lydia Yutzi Brenaman. Affiliated with the Maryland congregation in 1895 were 3 daughters, Sarah and Louis Beitzel, Elizabeth and Christian Selders, Mary and Peter Opel. Daniel and Susanna Brenaman are buried in the old Cherry Glade Cemetery. We've come to a point of talking again with each other. And the microphones are ready for you. Either the talk was very clear or profoundly foggy, I don't know which.
David, you haven't answered for me why the 4 Amish church houses were built in 1881.
I missed one part of your
The
question.
1881 building of 4 church houses. Why? How did they make the decision to build the 4 buildings in the same year?
How did they make the decision? I would like to share that in another paper, which I've already written, by the way. of the building of the 4 church houses. But it was by vote. There was a vote taken in the Maryland church, there's a vote taken in the Pennsylvania church. And that vote was not unanimous. And people could vote one of 3 ways, either yes or no, or leave it to the ministers. And there was a significant number of negative votes, but not a high number. And if you put the votes for yes and those who were in favor, the yes votes and those who said leave it to the ministers, that made a pretty solid decision then. And it must be that the ministers wanted the church houses, and through their own option or their own prerogative, on the basis of the votes who said leave it to the minister, but it was based on that vote. And I also found some evidence that it seems like people were visited. One example, I have the story through tradition, I think was Simon Beachy, who told me that his father-in-law, C.W. Bender, told him that C.W.'s father, Wilhelm Bender, was opposed to building church houses until the committee, I think he said a committee, visited him and discussed it, the purpose of it, and then he was in favor of it and actually contributed, I think it was $50, which sounds like a great deal of money for that time, contributed to the building of the church houses. So it seems like there was not just a blue sky vote without discussion, and there must have been some kind of a committee in place that had to do with it, but I haven't been able to find that committee or who was on it. But it was that sort of a process, yeah. and I was able to, I have access to the Maryland vote through papers handed down from my great-grandfather and grandfather and father and fell into my lap. I have those original papers. Well, they're in the archives now. I have the photocopies at home. And then I received the vote from Pennsylvania from, what's your cousin's name in Virginia? There's a Yoder in Virginia.
Keith Yoder.
Keith Yoder, yeah. Somehow he had the Pennsylvania votes and shared that with me. And I was able to come up with some pretty neat statistics on that. I think what had happened is I'd written that paper and then there wasn't room for it in this meeting, so that has to wait for another time if the committee accepts it.
I just got a text from your son, Kevin Miller.
Uh-huh.
He wants me to ask a question, and that is, he says, if you get this, can you ask Dad about a current building for the Amish churches being built right now? I'm watching live on the Historian website.
All right. Well, thank you, Kenneth. Glad to see. Where's the camera for me to look at? Right up there, I guess. The Amish built, did they first occupy this new building this year? Yeah, just this year was the first for them to occupy a brand new church building on Dorsey Hotel Road. And I'm guessing it's a mile from here, maybe a mile and a quarter. I used to walk this road regularly to go to school, you know, so this is home territory. And so I find it interesting that they persist in meeting in church houses. They actually have 11 districts now. When I was a boy, there was one district with 2 meeting houses. And some of these districts meet in homes that were sort of modified for meeting. I got that information recently from Benny C. Yoder, and surprised to learn how many districts there are. But this particular one now named the Cassleman district, I think it is. And if you just take Dorsey Hotel and keep driving and keep looking to the left, you will see a new church building with a barn. And once again, I don't know of any other place where real order Amish have church houses. Now at Gortner, which is an offspring of here, they did build church houses, although they are known now as New Amish, I think. But except for Gortner and this area, I don't know of any other place where real horse and buggy Amish have church houses. And there's opposition, or Joel J. Miller, the bishop, he got letters from Ohio from bishops who didn't think much of these church houses here. Well, that's expanding on another subject, I guess. All right, well, I think we can proceed now unless there's anything more. Yeah.
David, do you have more to present today?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have one more short section here.
Do we want a break? Do you want a break?
No, I don't think I need a
Okay,
break.
Then we'll continue on.
All right. Get a little water on my throat here if I can get this lid off. Somebody's kind enough to bring it up here but didn't open the lid for me.
I'd like to make a comment on the church houses. There was,
No.
there's a new church house built down close to Summit Mills. It's on the Rockdale Road.
Oh, I see.
They had their first church service in it last Sunday.
Oh, I didn't know about that one.
Yes, it's a new church house, a new horse barn.
Uh-huh.
And so they had their first service in it last Sunday.
I see. Well, thanks for sharing that. Uh-huh. We have traveled the Casselman Valley in this travelogue. We have gone from the Pennsylvania line south to the headwaters of the Casselman River and beyond. This involved a stretch of about 15 miles in this pre-horseless carriage days. We tried to reach back to 1877 with a schedule of 10 months from January to October. We visited 21 locations. We tried to understand the families that hosted the church services. These were real people with their joys and sorrows, their triumphs and struggles, their dreams and visions, their questions and convictions. They likely were not thinking so much of making history. They were simply serving God in their day and enjoying each other. Our resources and descriptions are much too sketchy to be satisfying, but these glimpses can be followed with further inquiry and writing. We can project back into 1877 the consistent Amish practice of turning to the Loblied as the second hymn in the Sunday morning church service. The Loblied gave opportunity for heartfelt worship. Now, I'm not sure what we're going to do next. Is there any provision? All right. So I think what we are now doing is playing the Loblied. We don't have a marker available, do we, to point to the text as they sing it. The marker was thrown down from the balcony. I hope it survived the crash. I don't know if I can maneuver this or not. What I'd like to do is point at the words as they sing it. If I can hear well enough what's going on, I may fail on this, but I will try. But I'm doing this locally because this still throughout Amishdom, throughout the whole country, thousands of churches on a Sunday morning sing this song in the slow tunes as a second song. And as near as I can detail, and Benny C. Yoder agrees with this, that this was the practice throughout the 1800s also. So these 21 places, 21 church services that we identified here, I think we can depend on it that they sang this song. And it varies from place to place, how it is sung. And this may not be quite authentic Casselman Valley, but it's close enough that for most of us to get a feel for it. Now let me practice with this. Well, I press this middle button.
No.
Oh, the top one there, huh? There we go. If I'm a little farther away, my trifocals are giving me trouble here. If you know where to point. Okay, let me try it now, see if I can. And if I sit down, I won't lose my balance. All right, let's try it. So I guess we will close this session then after singing the second song in the church service there. I understand that it typically in the local Amish church here takes 5 minutes to sing this much. This is one stanza. Did we have 2 stanzas or 1 stanzas here? Is that 1 stanza? Yeah, thank you. I'm glad we have some people here who are more authentic in understanding this than I am. So this should take 5 minutes, I believe, and there are 4 stanzas, so you spend 20 minutes in singing the lope lead. I think it was Benny C. Yoder told me that if they find themselves spending less than 5 minutes, they started to sing a little too fast, and they have to make a few adjustments on things then to keep things in line. Well, that concludes my presentation.
Like David, I'll finish down here. Well, this does conclude our weekend sessions. We have more to come. There's a meal downstairs, and donations are appreciated, I think it says. But in the meantime, David, thank you for what you have presented. And I don't know if you have followed how you followed David, but I can tell you this. He did an enormous amount of research to get all this together. And David, we thank you, and let's give him a round of applause. And David, next year is another year. It happens to be 25 instead of 24. And we want you back, even if you're not presenting, and we want your family to bring you back. And Irma as well. So thank you for being here. And Irma's laughing, so I think she's agreeing with me that you want to be coming back. I would just note again, I think next weekend we deviated from the normal 25-year sequence. And just note again that Marcus Yoder, the executive director of the Amish and Mennonite Heritage Center in Berlin, Ohio, will be the presenter. Some of you would know about Gayhoff, and that's the facility. I think we visited that years and years ago, but it may be of interest for you to see that. And Marcus will be presenting the overall theme of the Anabaptists from Zurich, Switzerland to the Casselman Valley. Friday evening, he'll be talking about the church as it was, the state church up into and through the Reformation for the first presentation. And the second presentation will be January 21, 1525. On Saturday morning, he'll be talking about how the movement spread, not only in Zurich, Switzerland, but way beyond. And of course, we know about Menno Simons. We know about what happened in European countries. And then finishing out how the movement came to the Casselman Valley. And I would just emphasize that if you want to hear an interesting presentation, Marcus will be that person, and encourage others to come and join us for that. In a way, it's looking back, but it's also in another way looking forward. And I mentioned earlier today, what is the lasting legacy of 500 years ago? The Mennonite Church in 2025 will be celebrating this occasion not only in their local communities but worldwide. I think today there are some over 2 million Anabaptists in the world, and big growth is happening in countries beyond our own, Africa and South America and other places as well. So with that, we will conclude. Let me just have a prayer for the meal, and then we will go from there. Thank you, Lord, for the day you have given. Thank you for David coming and presenting as he has. And as we think back and remember the challenges of our ancestors, we pray that we would appreciate those in a new way, and also that you would give us foresight as we look into the future and as we think about future generations. Thank you for the day you've given, for the beauty of this early fall day, and we thank you for the food you provided, and we pray that you would direct and bless our steps from here, and ask it in your name. Amen. I should have asked, is there anything else, Delvin or anybody else that... So with that, we're dismissed to go downstairs and continue conversations. Thank you all for coming.